Well, good afternoon, all. We're here with the 2020 NASCIO conference. We're going to have a little session here, discussion this afternoon around myths that we have around teleworking and that what we've overcome here in the past 6 to 7 months as we've been challenged with the COVID virus that's been impacting our workforce. So get right started here. Today we have Amanda Crawford from Texas DIR joining us to talk about how they've been overcoming some of the myths and some of the challenges in the teleworking environment today. So I'm Megan Steele. I'm the Senior Director for our state and local business here at NetApp. And Amanda, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience here today?
Okay, thanks, Megan. Hi, everyone. Great to be with you, even if virtually, and on a topic that I'm sure is near and dear to all of our hearts as we've been navigating these somewhat uncharted waters through this pandemic. As Megan mentioned, I'm the Executive Director of the Texas Department of Information Resources, also known as DIR, and we are the state's technology agency here in Texas. Texas, like many of y'all, is a federated model, so we while we set a policy and strategy, the ultimate control for IT systems ends up a lot of times in the particular agencies. But Megan, if you could advance the slide.
Yes.
So our mission is similar to that of many of those of y'all on the call, in that we are leading the state's technology strategy, protecting infrastructure through cybersecurity initiatives, and then offering innovative and cost-effective solutions for all levels of government. Next slide, please. Our eligible customers actually are not just state agency customers, though, is we also serve higher education, K-12, local governments, special districts, water utility districts, and other states. And we do that through a variety of different services, including our shared technology services that we offer, which is basically full or semi-managed IT services for our eligible customers. And also we have a cooperative contracts program with more than 750 contracts for IT goods and services that are available to any customers, including those out of state. So if you're not familiar with what we do here, be sure to check us out and see if there might be something that we can help you out with.
Awesome. Well, big state, a lot of employees, a lot of citizens to continue to service during this pandemic. And I know you've had your challenges. So let's kind of just get right into the discussion today about how you guys have overcome them with Texas DIR.
Yeah.
First myth, right? Telework is only suited for your younger workforce and non-leadership roles. What are your thoughts on this one, Mandy?
Well, I would say that one's pretty much busted, Megan. That would be a myth that has been completely busted. Yeah, exactly. Let's just jump in, right? So I will say I am a telework convert. I was one of those folks. I guess I'll also count myself as perhaps not falling in the younger workforce category either anymore. I was one who certainly thought that telework was fine for certain positions, but certainly not for those in management or leadership, and it's not something that I ever could see myself doing. And during the course of this pandemic, when we were forced to do it, I have busted that own myth, at least certainly for me and for our workforce. Now, I will say, as a technology agency, we already had a fairly robust telework program, but it was really more 1 or 2 days a week. And this was a goal that we had set for ourselves some years ago, and for multiple reasons. One of those is, we're located in Austin, Texas, and it's a very highly competitive market, particularly in technology. And so as a state agency trying to compete with those private sector salaries, it was tough for us. So we were hoping that maybe offering teleworking 1 or 2 days a week might be something to attract folks to government service. But certainly we had no telework at the level that we have now. And we jumped right in full feet. In fact, actually, the day that Governor Abbott issued the disaster declaration for the pandemic was March 13th, and that was a day when we had I had ordered all of our staff home for a mandatory telework test day to see what would happen if we all went home on Wednesday. And little did they know they wouldn't be coming back.
I mean,
right. And so, and we've really found as well that it's interesting how I'm not alone. I think lots of folks who never thought that they would enjoy telework have really just jumped right in and been able to adapt to the technologies. That's what we've heard from our agency customers as well. One of the first things that we worked on right away was just trying to enable that remote work. And I know we'll probably talk about some of the technologies later, but we really found that just getting folks up and running for remote work didn't turn out to be as challenging as probably some folks thought it would be. So it's pretty successful and got everyone to dive right in and get started with it.
Great. What do you think were some of those biggest challenges that you faced right out of the gate? I mean, you had already kind of fortuitously seen that perhaps this was coming, and so you had your kind of testing day from home, but generationally, did you see different kind of cultural things or gaps that you had to kind of adjust to differently, or do you think it was all like a one team effort there?
Well, I think it was definitely a team effort, but we also found that this was I am really fascinated by the multi-generations in a workplace, and I find that there's great opportunities there, not just for mentorship for those of us who've been in the workforce longer, but that reverse mentorship. And this was a great opportunity for some of our younger workforce to reach out to our staff and kind of help them figuring out things like, lighting, or maybe you want to get one of the, what do they call the influencer?
Yeah, the ring lights. Yes. I have many friends that are ring light aficionados now. Like things we never knew we would need to order on Amazon before, right? Before March 13th. So
exactly. And so some of those I think have it's been great opportunities that way to provide, like I said, that reverse mentorship for some of the just things that folks aren't always used to and comfortable with. I would say from a management perspective, one of the reasons when I said before I didn't think managers could do this or leaders is how do you go about managing staff and disciplinary actions and monitoring metrics to make sure that people are performing, and being thrust into it and having to do it, we really worked to adapt really quickly. So one of the things we instituted, for example, we've been hiring and onboarding people, which, hats off and kudos to folks who are joining an organization in the midst of a pandemic where you don't get to see people.
Right.
I mean, you're not meeting your coworkers face to face. But so what we've done is we actually there's a breezeway that you can drive through in between our parking garage and our office building. And so we've set up a drive-through onboarding process. And so staff come, and the new employees come through, they drive through the breezeway, they get their laptop, we exchange paperwork, and then they drive home and connect in an hour later and go through our orientation process. So that was just a flexible way that we were able to adapt to that, to try to figure out how we make all aspects of running an agency work.
That's super creative. I love that. I mean, I agree. We've had all the way up to our CEO at NetApp, right? Kind of shifting to this. How do you do virtual all hands calls across the entire globe, right? Or our virtual EBC. They've done a fantastic job, I think, of moving on this customer interaction from us sitting in front of you guys, typically across the table, to how can we do that interaction this way, right? So I think it's new for all of us. So, well, I think we can officially say this one's busted, and we'll move on to the next myth here that we've heard when it comes to teleworking. Myth number 2, teleworking provides a better work-life balance. What are your thoughts on this?
On this one? Well, I have to say, so my husband has teleworked for the better part of a decade. So I had some preconceived notions on this one rolling into it, because I certainly know what his work life is like from observing that. I think, so I didn't go into it with any preconceived notions of what was going to happen with this, but I think there were some folks who were thinking that it would be and hoping for a better work-life balance. But that certainly, I don't think that bears out. It just doesn't. I think now more than ever, I mean, you can literally get out of bed, your feet hit the floor, and you open up your laptop, walk to your desk, and you can be working literally from the time you roll out of bed until the time you get back into bed. And there's none of that even in between space and time when you walk to the break room to get a cup of coffee, or even just walk into a different conference room to join another meeting. Now you can take full advantage of your calendar, and it's just back to back to back to back to back meetings. And if anything, I think that's posed a real challenge. So as far as I'm concerned, I think this myth is busted.
Absolutely. I know one of my colleagues told me that he actually commutes to work still. He leaves his house and just like drives around the neighborhood, like listens to a podcast and comes back to his home office, because to your point, it's so hard to build in those kind of what we used to have as natural breaks in our day, whether it was coffee, etc. So I don't know if you guys are doing anything at Texas DIR. At NetApp, we're doing things like wellness days, or no internal calls on Fridays, like once a month, just to try to build back in those barriers, right, and kind of that space so that you're not sitting on Zoom all day. Have you guys thought about that, or any plans for that on how to kind of force the natural barriers back into the day?
Absolutely. I think we were on the same path there. So we started no meetings Thursdays, although somebody told me, who was it? It might have been, someone mentioned meatless Mondays, which I thought was really funny. To
That's a good one. I like it.
Whatever. Come up with something for Thursday. But so we have no meeting Thursdays, and those are it's a policy of our agency, and we have a policy document that outlines it. There are no internal meetings to be scheduled on Thursdays. And the idea behind that is to give us time to, one, just kind of decompress and take a break from the nonstop Zoom fatigue, but also to actually get the deliverables that we have to produce done and have some of that time to do the strategic thinking and the planning. Because otherwise what we were finding is, back-to-back meetings, 12-hour days of meetings, and then you start your work at 7 o'clock when you maybe grab a quick bite to eat, and then you're still working all those hours. So we've found that to be real. The team has really responded well to that. If you do have to have a meeting, obviously external meetings and customer meetings are fine, but if you have to have an internal meeting, you need to have the agreement of everybody internally on the call to be able to do that. And we've had a lot of success with that.
Great. That's great. So I think we can consider this myth busted as well, but looks like we're making some strides maybe in improving that and trying to help our employees and our citizens and everyone kind of build that natural work-life balance, whatever that means in 2020 back in there. So some good strides there.
Yeah, interestingly, we've been looking at some statistics about, because we're trying to gather metrics. Our legislative session starts in January, so we want to make sure we're armed and prepared for any questions that might come up about how this worked. And so one of the things we looked at was we compared the amount of annual leave and sick leave and comp time that was taken last year at this time compared with this year. And when you look at the numbers, it's unbelievable. I mean, people aren't taking time off, and they're losing some of that time just the way our leave system works. And so, and people are working now. Granted, you say they're not going anywhere, people aren't going vacation, but you can still take a staycation, and there's places to be able to go. So we've also, that's just one other thing, is try to encourage folks to take some time off, even if it's just to go to your backyard and stare at the trees for a while, or just go to a neighboring town and just go someplace for a little bit. Just do something to take a break and use that well-earned leave.
Yeah, and you guys are about to get that wonderful Texas fall coming up when it starts getting a little bit cooler out. So what a great time to take a little bit of that time to sit in the backyard and look at the trees. So that's a great, and you got Texas football starting again too. I mean, lots going on in Texas here in the fall. So great time to do a staycation.
Yeah, that Texas fall is my favorite 6 days of the year. Anyway.
Awesome. Well, moving on to myth number 3, teleworking requires complex technology. What have you guys found there?
So interestingly, when this all happened, what we found the biggest demand was for the simplest technologies. So as I mentioned earlier, we run a cooperative contracts program and also bulk purchasing initiatives. And we had, we had all of our state agencies go remote right away, many of them didn't have laptops, they didn't have headsets, they didn't have hotspots. And I know we're not unique. I know I've heard with colleagues in other states, that was one of the biggest challenges. And so we tried to play laptop matchmaker to match our customers up with the laptops, even if it wasn't what they asked for, but maybe we could finally get to, well, we just settle for this, or, you know, what about, I know you thought you wanted this, but could you go here? That was one of the biggest challenges moving with that. And then other things, we were able to quickly enable VPN access for, I think, more than 50 agencies that we helped that didn't have that. And we, I think, tripled our trunk lines. We also run the phone system in our Capitol complex. So we had to triple those now that all the phones that would normally come to office buildings were being forwarded out. And then we doubled the redundant internet capacity on our agency networks, which actually hit just in time. I think we ended up getting that done in about 2 weeks. And by the time it hit, we actually exceeded our average capacity. So if it was at 10 gigs, it went up to 11, like just a couple days after that was completed. So that was a just-in-time project to enable workers to be able to keep going.
Yeah, that's great. I know we've seen from the perspective, you know, of NetApp, when, you know, probably an acceleration. I don't know what you guys are seeing from your demand from your agencies, right, to go to the cloud. In terms of that just kind of gives you that scalability a little bit quicker for an unpredictable workload. We've worked in conjunction with Microsoft to launch virtual desktops with their WVD service and our Microsoft Azure NetApp files. Over 200 customers between COVID and now the beginning of COVID, either for remote desktops or remote classrooms, right? Because that's just, and that's a challenge, right? In terms of getting that access so quickly. And it's just been, and it's very fluid and it's scalable. I think it's almost kind of forced the, let's try this cloud thing out maybe a little bit sooner than a lot of maybe had thought about before, just because to your point, it was like just in time, right? And so have you seen that, or what's the demand from agencies from a perspective of maybe how to integrate cloud technologies into their workflows?
Absolutely. We've seen, to your point, and I think there's been a lot of, you know, funny memes going around about what drove digital transformation at your agency, and the answer is COVID-19. And that's absolutely true, is because now, I mean, this is the perfect example of all the things that we as IT leaders through all the states have been preaching to our customers for a while, and our agencies, is about the benefits and the scalability. And sure, not everything is necessarily suited for it, but being cloud smart and advancing that way. Our legislature last session passed 2 different bills that requires all state agencies to at least consider cloud technology when they're developing a new application. And we've had a tremendous outreach from different agencies looking to do that, just even on some basic things for, in order to handle the increased demand, for example, on websites. And some of that has just been a really great sort of dipping their toes into the water for agencies who weren't able to handle at all just the overwhelming onslaught that are coming into their websites and their agencies. Now, just by seeing what happens in the scalability by utilizing the cloud, they're looking forward to moving other applications there as well.
Yeah, a little bit of trial by fire, right? To your point, the digital transformation memes are pretty funny if you just type it into Google. There's some good ones out there, right? And COVID-19 certainly is going to be at the top of the list for many. So so great to see that you guys have met those challenges well. So
absolutely,
again, I think we can consider this one partially busted, right? We've seen some good technologies integrated, still some challenges out there, but it looks like we're making some progress there. And I love the ways that you guys have been supporting, even going back to that great idea that you had with how do you onboard people, right? That kind of how do you integrate technology to do that? I think often like kind of makes me think about like toll booth workers, right? It's like we had to quickly adapt that where there were how do you just super rapid integration of technology to be able to do things that previously were never known before that you could do that way. So another
exactly.
And myth number 4, you can't build team culture in a teleworking environment. Thoughts on that one?
Well, and this one, honestly, this is one of the ones that I worry about the most, because I think it is something that you have to be deliberate at all times and thinking through. I think we always have to be deliberate in trying to have whatever the team culture is and your values and your core values as an agency, and making sure that those are communicated effectively and then embodied by your employees. But it's a little bit tougher when we're not seeing each other. So but I think you can do it. You absolutely can. So one of the things we've tried to do, so we have, again, using these, remote technologies in order to keep us connected. So these collaboration tools. So we do a lot of virtual lunch events. And so our HR team is absolutely fantastic. I can't take credit for these, this is all them, but we've done things like show us your DIY project at home. It's your pet day. We have bring your kids to work day, of course, name that tune. We have trivia contests. We have charades. We have all kinds of absolute silly goofiness. Show us your favorite collection at home. And we've had tremendous turnout at these events, and they're usually hosted by somebody. I did one that was Oh, the Places You'll Go, and I hosted that one where you got to talk about what's a favorite trip, or what's on your bucket list, or do you have some pictures that you can share? And it's really, the response has been fantastic. And I think in a lot of ways, even though we're not together, I feel that we know each other better, certainly as work colleagues, because you get this extra little slice of a view into a slice of our employees' lives. I mean, you're seeing their houses behind them, and the kids that come and climb up on their laps, or ask you to cut their sandwich in the middle of a meeting, and
or more like, get this tablet. I think I'm out for my screen time today. Can you put the code back in, Mom? I've seen that one happen a couple of times.
You hear me screaming upstairs for my son to get off the internet and whatever. It's a ranked match, Mom. It's a ranked match. Like, I don't care. So, but it's that humanity in all of us, right? And I think part of it is just we have to extend a lot of grace to all of us. We're all going through a lot, and this is challenging for everybody. And so in many ways, I feel like we're stronger as a team. One thing we did is we've always done when we were in person, we would do quarterly all hands meetings. And we picked that tradition back up and did a virtual all hands meeting. But the twist that we did for this one is we had cookies made that were little thank you cookies. They're very cute. And we delivered the cookies in gift bags to all of our employees who were in the Austin metro area. So we divided them up with our leadership team. Everybody took 10, and we drove around, and that was really, it was fun. It was very rewarding to go do contactless delivery, just ring the doorbell and leave, and then get a wave from somebody that you hadn't seen in person for a while. And that really meant a lot to the folks. And for a very little amount of money, that we all just chipped in some money and were able to deliver some cookies and bring a smile to the face.
Surprise is always a good thing from that perspective, especially if it's a cookie for an all hands call. We kind of thought about that. We've been some like lunch and learns, right, where you can do like the Uber Eats kind of gift card that gets delivered, and everyone can pick their lunch out. And we've done some of the similar to you guys doing trivia contests and things like that for the all hands. One of the favorite ones that we did, we actually did a team competition, and they raised money for a local COVID related charity. And so over the course of about an hour and a half, each team kind of came with their team uniform, their team walk-on song, kind of picking a local charity. We raised almost 30 grand for COVID charities with cash matching that NetApp matched. So that was unbelievable, and it totally, but I think to your point, everyone is like, we're in this together, right? And showing each other some grace and thinking about those that no matter how bad your day is, there's always probably someone out there that's struggling a little bit more that we can all think about how to give back to. So I think I agree with you, total cultural builder from that perspective. What outside of the onboarding that you're doing with the drive-through onboarding, we talked a little bit about culture starting a new job. Any things that you can share there? How have you assimilated new people that have never met anyone on your team in person yet? Any thoughts there to share with the group?
Sure. So what we did, in fact, we had one today. So we onboarded 3 new employees today, and I always drop in on those meetings. If they were here in person, I do that as well, just to go. I try to meet all my new employees. And so I drop in virtually and talk again about our core values. And then we've done virtual water coolers. So especially with new employees, where they get to go to the water cooler of, say, the finance department, and the finance department hosts it. And it's just it's a Teams meeting, and they just talk a little bit about, hey, here's what we do in finance. And they get to meet each other and do that. And we go all around the agency virtually so that they can have these little water cooler times to go ahead and meet. And so far we've been pretty successful. I will say, you know, retention has been great with the folks that have onboarded. We haven't had anyone leave during the pandemic, at least from the new folks. Now, I will say one of the challenges, and the thing that makes me really, it's just sad, is that we've had a few retirements during this time. And I hate that we haven't been able to get together and really celebrate and do those. So in fact, many of y'all on the call know Todd Kimbriel, the state of Texas CIO, retired. And so we did a virtual event for him, and we all got in on a call, and then we made a video for him and let him know that we wished him well. So that's looking forward to be able to get back and properly say farewell to so many folks who have really made our agency what it is.
Yeah, I know those are tough. We've had a couple of those as well. I think the one thing that we found really works really well on the Teams platform is we've done, to your all hands point, we'll have the teams do virtual watch parties together on Teams, the Teams platform. So then as like our CEO or someone speaking, you've got a smaller team because typically you'd be sitting in a room together, right, watching it on the big screen. And we found that the teams really love that, right? It's things that you like. As a leader, I'm like, oh, am I just forcing them to get on this cultural event on happy hour? But then we surveyed them, they're like, bring it back. So I think it's people are dying, I think, literally for some engagement, right? And I think that this virtual platform helps them for sure figure out how to get that touch, that little virtual touch every day in their day. So I think fourth myth and final myth we can say is busted. So kind of leave it with just some final thoughts here, right? Where do we go from here? You said, hey, you're a convert now, right? Where do you see us going from here? What do you think this looks like in the future? Probably, just short term as we transition back to the workplace here in hopefully the next couple of months or so. And then what do you think long term? What do you think the long-term impact is here?
Sure. I think that, certainly in the short term or near term is we'll see more folks coming back, at least, on several days a week, as we hopefully are able to kind of clear this latest hurdle, and the numbers will support that. As I said, we have our legislative session coming up, and so that's something that we're really mindful of, is to, one, we're not sure exactly how that session is going to run and what that'll look like, but we are looking forward, I guess, as an agency to maintaining this expanded telework in some capacity. I don't know what that looks like necessarily, but in order to be prepared for that, that's when I was talking about we're doing metrics, and we're looking at, number of meetings, number of emails sent, deliverables where we can actually show concrete metrics, the amount of leave taken, and those sorts of things, to be able to explain to the legislature, because I think that the appropriators are going to want to know, have we still been delivering? And that's the key, is that we all know that IT powers the business of government, and that it's up to us to make sure that that business continues, and that it's resilient and it's strong, and we can come out of whatever challenges face us. And so as we look at that, we also have to be accountable to the decision makers and to state leadership, and be able to explain that. I think that we can do that. I know that we're not alone in the productivity and the fact that we've been able to continue to deliver for our constituents. In fact, delivering at levels maybe even that are unprecedented, just because of the urgency of being able to be scalable and deliver remotely in this pandemic. And I think the other thing that I want to emphasize, and this is something that we've been working on and communicating with our state leadership, is the ability, as I touched on at the beginning, to offer telework really helps the state in being able to recruit and retain top talent. because this is something that we can now, if we're moving forward in the future post-pandemic, we can compete with the private sector now. If we can offer some sort of expanded telework, and also from a diversity perspective, I mean, think about this. It's like when we don't have to live in our metropolitan or our capital areas, we have the ability to really get diverse talent pool, because we have this natural throughout the state. So we could have folks in rural communities that now can just telework and still work for the state and be able to deliver. So I'm excited by the possibilities, but I think we have to have some sort of hard metrics and numbers to be able to defend the position, to be able to continue with this expanded telework posture.
Yeah, I think that's great point about being able to get to that diverse workforce, right, outside of the Austin area now that obviously is very populated and, to your point, very competitive market. But what a great way to give opportunity to citizens across the state to join the agency. And I think to the point of giving back and all being in this together, I think that there's going to be maybe more of an uptick of people that want to get into public service, right? And so maybe as we exit this, there'll be, especially if you can give them some work perks. I mean, I think that's a great opportunity to come and work for the state. I think you guys have done a great job. I love all the creativity and everything from the cookies to the drive-through onboarding to just leveraging the technology. It's just fantastic. Really, really great job.
Well, thank you, Megan. Thank you.
Well, it's been a great half hour with you. I'm looking forward to the Q&A session with the NASIO attendees. So with that, we'll sign off and we'll chat with everyone here in a bit.